Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this review, we are looking at the Figma Metroid Other M Samus Aran in her Zero suit. And boy am I happy. It's a very basic figure, so they didn't have to do much to get it right. And it's a Nintendo character, so that's another bonus point right there. But they didn't screw anything up, and that's why I'm very happy about this figure. Sure, it could have been more elaborate, but what they did do, they executed very well, so I'm happy about that. So I'm very happy to show this to you. I'm very happy to add it to my Smash Brothers collection. I'm very sad because all of my collection is in Texas, and I can't compare it to anything currently. It's very, very unfortunate, but we can look at this figure, so let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This figure stands roughly just over 5.5 inches, which makes it just about 14, a little over 14 centimeters. And of course, I have the legs slightly bent, and you'll be able to pose it differently to adjust the height slightly. That'll give you an idea, though, of how tall it is. And first impressions on this thing, I love the paint job. It's so metallic and so not glossy, which makes it look like a very quality figure. And it is. It's very, very well executed. The one gripe I have with this thing is her metallic hair. I understand why they did that. A lot of companies are making hair metallic these days to give it that kind of sheen that hair has when it's clean, and that's fine. It's not like it's a big deal, but for me personally, I'm not a huge fan, especially on a figure where the rest of the figure is metallic. It just ends up looking a little strange, but I really don't mind it. I think it looks okay. And, well, okay, you know what? Let's go into the accessories. Let me not get ahead of myself. I don't want to get carried away. We do have some accessories. So we have an interchangeable faceplate. Let's start with that. We have her standard face, and then we have one where she looks kind of a little solemn, or maybe sad, or something. It's a little bit different, so we have that. And then we have an interchangeable hairpiece, which also comes with the little earpiece, which is kind of nice. So she has the short hair with the earpiece. So you have some options there. We do have a helmet, which is not made for her to wear. She's just meant to hold it. But it is very nicely done, and I'm sure it wouldn't take much work to make this a wearable thing with a little bit of customizing. So that's kind of cool. We do get her gun, which looks like it's in her holster, but it's not. The part in her holster is just a removable grip. The gun itself is a separate piece, which is very nicely detailed. Tons of sculpt work and detail for such a tiny piece. And then we have a bunch of interchangeable hands. We have the 2 fist hands, we have 2 gripping hands, a thumbs up hand, another gripping hand, an angled pistol holding hand, and 2 jazz hands. And then lastly, we have our standard Figma display stand, so you'll be able to get her in some nice dynamic poses. Now, like I said, on the figure, the paint job's really nice in terms of the metallic paints. It's nice and clean, but if you look at her boobages, you can see that logo on her chest is very nicely implemented, very well executed, super clean. And then that's the same kind of print work we see on her hand. Very, very clean print work. And then we have more on her back. It's just so nice. Then we have these nice fine blue pinstripes going throughout the light blue. Looks very, very cool. It goes down to her feet. Very well executed. And then, of course, Figma nailed the face. They tend to do that on the less realistic looking figures. They can just nail the faces, and they did. Very nicely done. So I'm happy about that, if you guys can't tell. So let's go through the articulation real quick. It's fairly basic, but it does function pretty nicely. So the head is on a standard Figma. Let me go ahead and pop that off so you can see. It's a ball hinge with a straight peg going into the neck, then a ball peg going into the head, so you can move it around like that, and then of course you can rotate the hinge around however you want. Now sometimes Figma offsets that ball peg in a weird way so that it's hard to pose the head. This figure does not have that problem, so we are very lucky in that regard. It sits very nicely on the neck. The ponytail has just a basic ball peg. It is the ball peg, so it'll move around a little bit, definitely enough. It's not going to have any crazy dynamic posing, but it'll be just fine, and it looks very good. I'm very happy with how that worked out. For the shoulders, you would think it's a standard Figma ball peg, but it's a little bit nicer. We've seen this a few times on other Figmas, and I like that they implemented it here. You can leave the arm in there so it looks very natural, or you can pop that ball peg out just a little bit, and that will kind of function as your butterfly. It'll give you a little bit extra range, helps posing the figure. So you have that ball peg where it connects to the torso. Then you have your ball hinge in here, which allows for basically all the posability, and that will peg into the bicep, which does give you a little bit of a bicep swivel, but not a ton. And since her arms are very tubular, very noodly anyway, which is fine, you can just use your elbow for your bicep swivel, and it doesn't really impact the figure adversely at all, so that's pretty cool. And you do get nice range out of that elbow. It's a little bit better than 90, and it looks good, so I'm happy about that. For the wrist, we have your standard ball hinge, which functions nicely. Obviously, when it's a very clean line like that, you don't see the hinge that much. You're slightly more limited in the articulation, but I like it this way. This is the perfect balance, I think. You have just a tiny bit of obvious hinge in there, and it gives you enough range and enough aesthetic to make everybody happy. So I'm very, very happy about that. For the upper torso, which is the only torso articulation, very nicely executed double ball peg. Very seamless looking, basically in every pose. You can move it around very, very nicely. Rotation, lean it back, lean it forward, side to side. You may not be able to get her to crouch over completely, but you'll be able to put her in some nice poses with pretty much no problem at all. For the hips, it's our standard Figma hip setup. So we have a ball peg, goes into the torso, and then it splits off into 2 more ball pegs. So they can move around technically, but since it's a solid plastic piece, you're not going to get much out of it. But the hips do work very nicely. So you'll notice it's a pretty clean line for her butt cheeks, and that sounds weird to say, but oftentimes on figures that have basically no like baggy clothes or anything, it's hard for them to get the butt to thigh connection to work well. And they did a good job here. So she looks good when she's just standing there, and when you bring the leg forward, which it does go pretty far forward, it's not bad. You do get a little bit of gapping if you go all the way, but they did a pretty good job with that. I'm very happy with it. Now we do have some limitation going out to the side. It doesn't look terrible, but you just don't have the most range. So I'm okay with it. I think they did a good job of balancing the aesthetic with the range of motion. You do get a thigh swivel in there, so that's pretty cool. You have our single jointed knee. Now it does give you really good range, and it looks good when it's bent. Could be a little bit better when it's not bent. We have kind of this weird bulbous knee situation with the joint sticking out of the back. I've seen better from Figma, so I was hoping this would be that, and it's not, but it's not bad. It's definitely not a deal breaker. For the ankle, we have our standard Figma hinge, which is just a hinge with 2 straight pegs, so you can technically rotate it around and give yourself an ankle rocker. Though the sculpt doesn't allow for that much, it'll be enough to get her posed, and since it comes with the display stand to help her balance, you really won't have any issue at all. So my final verdict on this figure: should you buy it? Yes. Yes, you should. And it will be in stock in Big Bad Toy Store very soon. Obviously, there will be some delays due to the holiday season, but it should be available soon, so you might want to check out that link in the description below. Get yourself one on pre-order so that you make sure you add this to your Smash collection or your general collection, because it's a really solid figure, and it's very nice looking, very nice shelf appeal. So there it is, guys. I do recommend it. I also recommend that you click that subscribe button, and if you haven't, click that little bell button next to it. Make sure you turn on notifications so that YouTube tells you when I upload a video, because I upload videos every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, unboxings, all kinds of fun stuff, guys. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.